One of my favourite collaborations to come out of the British music scene in the late 1970s is that of Chaz, Jankel and Dury. This collaboration produced the album New Boots and Panties, which was released in 1977. I'm going to look at the funkier side of the album. The oddball combinations is what makes this album particularly interesting. You take Dury's Cockney swagger and poetic talents, and then you have Chaz Jankel's great ability to write memorable guitar riffs and melodies and, interjecting little jazzy elements here and there, alongside the rhythmic muscle of Norman Watt-Roy and Charley Charles.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll are all my brain and body need.
When I first heard the album, I was stunned, the very idea that you could have this Cockney geezer talking and singing over these really jazzy, funky grooves. And these funky grooves were lined up against more English music hall punk rock with really clever and funny lyrics. It's a bit of a scattershot listening experience. But once you adjust it to Dury's style of singing, you listen carefully to the lyrics, you realize that, he was a poet. I mean, he had a great talent for the verse, a real wordsmith.
Bus driver's prayer.
Bus driver's prayer, go on.
Our Father, that way, who art in Hendon, Arrow Road be thy name. Thy Kingston come, thy Wimbledon, in earth as it is in Hendon. Give us this day our Berkhamsted, and forgive us our Westminsters, as we forgive those who Westminster against us. For thine is the Kingston, the Purley and the Crawley, for Ivor and Ivor, crouching.
Dury had a great talent for writing lyrics, and I really want to do that justice, but we'll do that in another video later on down the line. But in this one, I want to focus predominantly on the rhythm section of 3 pieces of music from New Boots and Panties. That's Clever Trevor, If I Was With a Woman, and Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. Now, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll wasn't released on the first pressing of the album. One of the reasons why the single wasn't released on the album was because Dury didn't like to have singles on the album, because he thought that if you did that, then people wouldn't buy the singles. So that's why it's not there on the first pressing. But nevertheless, it's from the same recording sessions with the same rhythm section. Okay, so let's start by looking at the rhythm section for Clever Trevor. Now, this is a slow, laid-back kind of groove. It floats along really nicely. And what I want to do is start by looking at the drums and the bass. So let's just have a listen to the drums and bass isolated from the rest of the track. If you really think about it, it's very, very simple. I mean, there's nothing particularly syncopated about the drums, but it's just the feel. It's these little slight rhythmic nuances that you get. There's a little bit of a drag between certain hits, and there's a slight swing to it. It's all these subtle characteristics that give the drum part a real sense of groove. Norman Watt-Roy's bass line is aligned with the drums. Now that the groove is established in the drums and bass, you have Chaz Jankel's guitars overdubbed. Panned left is the rhythm guitar, and panned right is this palm mute type of figure. So that rhythm part is panned left, and then on the right,
Just 'cause I ain't never had no nothing worth having, never ever, never, ever.
My favorite line is towards the end where Dury is assuming the character Clever Trevor. It says, also it takes much longer to get up north, the slow way. I mean, the humor elements are great. It's really, you know, representing characters we all know, you know, we've all grown up with, or some point in our lives we've met people like that. But it's not done in a derogatory way. It's done in an endearing way, which is really sweet, you know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
If I Was With a Woman is a really hard-hitting groove. It's just the way it comes in, the way Charlie Charles plays on this. In fact, Charlie Charles has got a heavy hand. When he plays the drums, he really hits them hard. And that's what I really like about the playing. You can hear the fierceness in the way he plays. This one's not quite as straight as Clever Trevor. I don't mean straight as in that it doesn't have funk, but it's a little bit more syncopated. There is no kick or snare on the one. It's before and after. So the first kick comes in on the last semiquaver of beat 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, ba. Now the bass is tracking the drums again. Just like it did in Clever Trevor, the same thing is happening here. So it's doubling the kick and the snare at certain points within the groove. And then to emphasize the bass line, you have Jankel doubling the riff. It's kind of around the E minor pentatonic, E blues scale. You got that sharp 4 there. And in the piano, Jankel, I think it's Jankel who's playing piano on this. He plays this very jazzy chord. It's like an 11 chord or an E flat major over F, if you like. You can call it an F11 down to 11 or E flat major over F down to D major over E. So on the piano you can hear those two chords descending by a semitone. So very jazzy chords, and although they're interjectory, they add a nice flavor to the groove.
If all you ever do is business you don't like.
Now again, in Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, the drums and the bass are rhythmically coordinated. It's very basic. If you listen to the drums, it's just boom, cats, boom, cats, boom, cats, boom, boom, boom. He does 2 quavers every other bar. Not all the time, but sometimes, just to give it a bit of a skip into the next section. And Watroy is just playing. He goes up the octave the second time round. Of course, one of the great things about this song is the intro, that drum roll that Charlie Charles plays. He starts on the rototoms and then gradually goes through the toms before the groove comes in. Really cool, really, really cool. While the drums and bass are playing this groove, again, Jankel's playing 2 guitar parts. He has a rhythm part on one track.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll. Sex and drugs and rock and roll.
And the other guitar, he's got that main signature riff. An interesting point I wanted to raise about Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll is the structure of the song. It's not very conventional structure. It's not like verse, chorus, middle eight, chorus, etc., etc. You have chorus and then what sounds like a bridge It may be acting as a verse, but it sounds more like a bridge. Back into the main riff again. You got Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll is the chorus section, then a bridge, back into the chorus, then the bridge, so on and so on. Then there's like a piano solo. So it's an unusual structure.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll. Sex and drugs and rock and roll. Sex and drugs and rock and roll.